The Khufu ship is an intact full-size vessel from ancient Egypt that was sealed into a pit in the Giza Pyramid complex at the foot of the Great Pyramid of Giza around 2500 BC. The ship now is preserved in the Giza Solar Boat Museum. The ship was almost certainly built for Khufu, the second pharaoh of the 4th dynasty of the Old Kingdom of Egypt. Like other buried ancient Egyptian ships, it was apparently part of the extensive grave goods intended for use in the afterlife, and contained no bodies, unlike Northern European ship burials. History. The Khufu ship is one of the oldest, largest, and best preserved vessels from antiquity. It measures 43.6 meters long and 5.9 meters wide. It was thus identified as the world's oldest intact ship and has been described as a masterpiece of woodcraft that could sail today if put into water, lake and river. However, the vessel may not have been designed for sailing or paddling. The ship was one of two rediscovered in 1954 by Kamal el-Malik, undisturbed since it was sealed into a pit carved out of the Giza bedrock. It was built largely of Lebanon cedar planking in the shell-first construction technique, using unpegged tenons of Christ's thorn. The ship was built with a flat bottom composed of several planks, but no actual keel, with the planks and frames lashed together with half-a-grass, and has been reconstructed from 1,224 pieces which had been laid in a logical, disassembled order in the pit beside the pyramid. Reconstruction. It took years for the boat to be painstakingly reassembled, primarily by the Egyptian Department of Antiquities chief restorer, Ahmed Youssef Mustafa. Before reconstructing the boat, he had to gain enough experience on ancient Egyptian boat building. He studied the reliefs carved on walls and tombs, and many of the little wooden models of ships and boats found in tombs. Hajj Ahmed visited the Nile boatyards of Old Cairo and Mahdi and went to Alexandria, where wooden river boats were still being made. He hoped that modern Egyptian shipwrights might have retained shipbuilding methods that would suggest how ancient Egyptians built their ships. Then he investigated the work of shipwrights who built in a different tradition. Function. The history and function of the ship are not precisely known. It is of the type known as a solar barge, a ritual vessel to carry the resurrected king with the sun god Ra across the heavens. However, it bears some signs of having been used in water, and it is possible that the ship was either a funerary barge used to carry the king's embalmed body from Memphis to Giza, or even that Khufu himself used it as a pilgrimage ship to visit holy places and that it was then buried for him to use in the afterlife. The Khufu ship has been on display to the public in a specially built museum at the Giza Pyramid complex since 1982. Its discovery was described as one of the greatest ancient Egyptian discoveries in Zahi Hawas's documentary Egypt's 10 Greatest Discoveries. The ship is housed in the Khufu Boat Museum, a small modern facility resting alongside the Great Pyramid. The first floor of the museum takes the visitor through visuals, photographs and writings on the process of excavating and restoring the felucca. The ditch where the main felucca was found is incorporated into the museum ground floor design. To see the restored felucca, the visitor must climb a staircase leading to the second floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows allow for much sunlight, and the wooden walkway takes the visitor around the felucca where the visitor can get a close view of its impressive size, 143 feet long and 19.5 feet wide. Other solar ships in Egypt. Several boat pits were found in ancient Egyptian sites. Abu Gorab, a few hundred meters to the north of Abusia, about 6 miles southwest of Cairo, is the sun temple known as Abu Gorab. There lies the ruins of Neos's temple, outside the temple proper and near its southern side. The German expedition also discovered a large building in the shape of a boat. This was a pit, lined with mud bricks which was at one time plastered, whitewashed and colored. This structure was augmented with several other elements made from different materials such as wood. This structure is believed to have been purely symbolic, representing a solar boat, in which the sun god was supposed to have floated across the heavenly ocean. Abu Rawash. 2 boats were discovered at Abu Rawash Hill M. at the complex Ajedafra, Emil Chassanate, between 1900 and 1902. Discovered the remains of a funerary settlement and a boat pit. The solar boat pit is situated on the east side of the pyramid. It is a ditch 35 meters long cut out of the living limestone. It is destined for the royal boat. The beautiful heads carved into the likeness Ajedafra were found there. Abuzir Neferir's pyramid at Abuzir was the largest structure in the region. Large wooden boats were buried outside the pyramid in its courtyard on the north and south sides. Archaeologists discovered them by their mention in a Kashif papyrus found within the mortuary temple, but unfortunately, when they excavated the southern boat pit, only dust remained of the boat itself. Abydos. In 1991, in the desert near the temple of Khonsu near Abydos, archaeologists uncovered the remains of the 14 ships dating back to the early First Dynasty, possibly associated with Hor-Ahar. These 75-foot-long ships are buried side by side and have wooden hulls, rough stone boulders which were used as anchors, and sewn wooden planks. Also found within their desert graves were remains of the woven straps that joined the planks, as well as reed bundles that were used to seal seams between planks. The Abydos ships have the honor of being the world's oldest planked boats. Abydos had at least a dozen boat graves adjacent to a massive funerary enclosure for the late dynasty, the second pharaoh Khafre. Their age should be more than 400 years older than Khufu's ships were 25 meters long, 2.5 meters wide and about 0.5 meters deep, seating about 30 rowers. They had narrowing sterns and prows and they were painted. They are in meaning and function the direct ancestors of the boat recovered at Khufu's Great Pyramid at Giza. The ships are possibly associated with King Ahar, the first ruler of that dynasty. The length of the structures varied from nearly 20 to 27 meters. These are the world's most ancient planked hulls. The traditions of the hull construction seen in all the excavated vessels continued through the end of the 6th century BC and, with the substitution of nails for mortise and tenon joints, into the present. An abandoned freighter, stripped of its internal timbers and left on a small branch of the Nile near Materia, provides the first instance of pegged mortise and tenon joints in an Egyptian hull. Not all joints were through-fastened, and the pegs, or tree nails, may also have fastened frames to the hull. But for this marks a dramatic departure from previous shipbuilding techniques. Dashur. 6 boats of Middle Kingdom date were found at Dashur. They're about 10 meters long each. In 1893, Jacques de Morgan discovered 6 boats near the Middle Kingdom Pyramid of Senwosri, the third at Dashur. He made drawings and measurements of only one boat from the cache at Dashur. Excavations conducted in AD 1894 and 1895 by French archaeologist Jean-Jacques de Morgan at the funerary complex of Senwosri the third on the plain of Dashur revealed 5 or 6 small boats. Today, only 4 of the Dashur boats can be located with certainty. 2 are in the United States, 1 in the Carnegie Museum of Natural History in Pittsburgh and 1 in the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago. The remaining 2 are on display in the Egyptian Museum, Cairo. Since their excavation, these boats remained relatively inconspicuous until the mid-1980s when one of the hulls in the United States was studied. It was not until the 2000s that the 2 boats in Cairo were studied. Giza Necropolis. Khufu. 7 boat pits have been identified around the Great Pyramid, 5 of which belong to the Great Pyramid proper. The other 2 are associated with the Pyramid of Hetepheres and the Pyramid of the Ka. Khufu's boat pits are located on the eastern side of the pyramid and the southern side. In one of the southern boat pits, a disassembled wooden barge was discovered in 1954. It has been reconstructed and resides in the boat-shaped museum. In 1987, the western boat pit at the Great Pyramid was examined by a microprobe inserted through a hole drilled into the pit, confirming the presence of a second wooden boat similar to the first. It was originally decided that the second boat should remain in its pit, in conditions which made its preservation near perfect. The second solar boat of Curfew is being excavated in 2012-2013 and is going to be reconstructed. Sakaji Yoshimura, a Waseda University professor who is leading the restoration project with Egypt's Antiquities Council, said that scientists discovered that this second ship is inscribed with Khufu's name. Khafra's pyramid has 5 pits that once contained funeral boats. One known boat pit is alongside the east face of Khafra's pyramid. Another 2 of the covered boat pits of Khafra lie on the east side of the pyramid. An covered boat pit lies on the south side of the mortuary temple of Khafra. Others Eunice has 2 boats. Archaic boats had been found at Helwan by Z. Saad. In total 4 or 5 boat burials were found at Helwan, 2 at Abu Roash Hill M, and finally others at the northerly Abydos site of the royal enclosures. Near those just found, remains of Old Kingdom boats were found at Tarkana Model Estate, and funerary boat was found at Saqqara by W. Emery. At least 3 mud brick boat graves were associated with First Dynasty rulers and high-ranking officials. 40 timbers were found in excavations near the Pyramid of Senus at Ayalisht. They were identified as part of vessel or vessels. A mud brick boat pit has also been found outside Ameneme's pyramid perimeter wall. Excavation of the remains of seagoing ships at Wadi Musorgawasis, south of Safaga on the Egyptian Red Sea coast, in 2004-05 and 2005-06 provides extensive physical evidence for construction techniques, wood selection, and recycling and reuse practices of the ancient Egyptians. Discoveries at Gawasis prove that common Egyptian river-oriented design and construction techniques were successful both on the Nile and at sea.